Hi, greetings of the day. Welcome to my channel AI. My name is Vidya. In this course, we learn about programming with Kubernetes native development, meaning we'll learn to either enhance Kubernetes functions by extending the orchestration or bring out the internal aspects of Kubernetes resources like paths, deployments, services, and more. To begin with, we will focus on Kubernetes native API objects that are referred to as built-ins and shipped with Kubernetes, and then later dive into Kubernetes custom resources or objects that we will create later during this course. The Kubernetes project provides a number of third-party consumable Git repositories under the Kubernetes organization on GitHub. All of the k8s.io repositories needs to be imported in the project for development. Now you must be pondering in your mind as where and when such libraries or repositories will be used when we have such a rich set of client tools to access Kubernetes resources from the command line interface or graphical dashboard. Let me explain. Consider a case where you are required to access the Kubernetes resources in a programmatic manner outside of what is being offered by the kubectl command, or maybe even if you want to mimic the function of kubectl command in your application. This is when you would use the client Go library. Essentially, Client Go library provides programming interfaces that can be written in Golang, which is the primary coding base for Kubernetes. There are, of course, various client interfaces available in other programming languages, including Java too. Now, let's say you are required to access a bunch of native resource types like paths, services, and deployments and grab some specific content like number of paths running in a specific namespace or one that's owned by you across a specific cluster, then you simply call upon these APIs defined in the library and get the required function achieved. This is where Client Go library becomes handy. The Kubernetes programming interface in Go mainly consists of Client Go library imported as k8s.io/client Go in the application shipped with every Kubernetes release. Meaning, for every Kubernetes release 1.x.y, there is an equivalent mapping of the Client Go library, which is 1.x.y. So it's very important and essential that your Client Go library matches with your Kubernetes versions for seamless performance. Now let's talk about bunch of REST APIs supported by Client Go. The Client Go library basically comprises of REST API verbs to perform CRUD operations, meaning create, retrieve, update, and delete operations like get, create, list, patch, and update followed by delete, which is implemented using HTTP interface over the API server. Further, watch is a special type of REST API verb which is used to watch the behavior of the resources on the Kubernetes cluster, which we will discuss in later stages. Now, we will take a detailed look into the repositories available from the Kubernetes organization, including Client Go. As mentioned before, for consuming client libraries, you need to import all of the k8s.io repositories. Client Go repository primarily holds the client interfaces. So generally speaking, in a Golang, an interface type is defined as a set of method signatures, which we will see later. Further, Client Go also contains a lot of generic library code, and this helps clients talk to the Kubernetes API server. Typically, the client application makes use of tools /client CMD to set up a client from kubeconfig file and Kubernetes, which we will see when we are doing hands-on in our next session. We will now walk into the client Go repository, which we just discussed, and see a bunch of packages here. The Kubernetes package, which we discussed previously, contains the client set to access the Kubernetes API. There are additional packages as you scroll down here, which is, as you see, there is a transport package that is used to set up the authentication and start of a connection. And then you have tools, and then further you have the plugin package that contains again more details with authentication. We scroll down and further see, yeah, now we hit the compatibility matrix, which is very important, and we discussed previously that the Kubernetes version needs to exactly match with the client Go release for seamless performance and error-free functionality. Meaning, if the Kubernetes release and the client Go release are the same version, you get perfect release here. Otherwise, you see a plus and a negative sign. That is, a plus indicates that the client Go has features or API repository objects that not present in the Kubernetes cluster. And the negative one indicates that the Kubernetes cluster has more features than the one that client Go does not have. So this makes a very important decision when you're actually building. All said, the packages discussed here will have their use cases. However, the most important and commonly used one is the tools client CMD, which I have even mentioned previously that it's used for accessing the Kubernetes API server via kubeconfig file. Now we will look into another repository, the API repo. That's located over here, Kubernetes/API. We know that from previous discussion that client Go library holds the client interfaces. The Kubernetes API Go types are held by the API repository. Pods are legacy API group found here, while most of the Kubernetes object types are defined in kh.io/api/core-v1 types.go. You see types.go here, and the basic pod definition, which is primary Kubernetes object, is seen here. The actual Go types are contained in types.go, which is part of kh.io/api core-v1 types.go and can be accessed in Go cone via importing kh.io/api. The third important repository in the Kubernetes organization is the API machinery that can be found in kh.io API machinery. This comprises of the building blocks required to build Kubernetes kind of APIs. Now, API machinery has utilities to filter and further manage containers, and not only just manage containers but beyond that to build website too. Essentially, it holds utilities for encoding, decoding, conversion package for Kubernetes and more. kh.io/api machinery/package/api meta v1 package has all of the generic API types for object meta, type meta, get options, and list options. This gives you fairly a good understanding of most important repositories available for Kubernetes programming. In the next session, we will take a dive into client Go and make our hands dirty. Until then, it's bye from Vidya. If you like the kind of videos that I'm making, consider subscribing. Thank you.